Hi, this is Bianca Anderson. Thank you for joining me today as I go through Border Crossers Dallas-Fort Worth Regional Plan. Throughout this time together today, I will outline three quantitative outcomes, review the strategy for achieving the deliverables, and explain what support and/or resources might be needed to achieve the selected goals in the areas of community outreach, contract acquisition, trainer support and development, and site infrastructure. Community outreach, raising the awareness about Border Crossers Dallas-Fort Worth must be one of our first priorities because we desire to make a positive impact in the greater Dallas-Fort Worth community. And because of that, our first goal needs to be to just get the information out there. My first deliverable is to distribute print marketing materials to local stakeholders like school leaders, teachers, and parents. This is the first step in introducing Border Crossers to many of the people in Dallas-Fort Worth who don't yet know about us. My strategy for doing this is to produce flyers and distribute them at PTA meetings, DFW school district headquarters, board meetings, school board meetings, and other community events. In order to do this, I'll need support and resources like a proofreader, a computer, mass printing access. The next deliverable that I have planned for us is to expand our marketplace impact and community awareness by leveraging the power of social media. We know that when we share things on social media, people do see it. So the strategy for this is to compose and use a DFW news headline as a hook each day for a social media post via Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or Snapchat. Support that I'll need to be able to access, I'll need to be able to have access to post on Border Crossers social media accounts. And next, follow up. Follow up, follow up, follow up. Follow up through emails that include a testimonial video. This video should be of participants that have taken the Dallas Talking About Race training here in Dallas, maybe Dallas facilitators, people who have been positively impacted by Border Crossers here in Dallas. We want to send out a testimonial video through an email system that touches base with the people who have already been in our training. I also want to make sure I make follow-up phone calls to each former Talking About Race in the Classroom participant. So in order to do this, the strategy that I have is to collaborate with the Border Crossers executive directors to create a call script and call each former participant and inform them about Border Crossers Dallas-Fort Worth. I'd also like to inquire about facilitating a staff training for their school community. Who should I talk to? Do they think that that would be something important for their school community? Get some background information about some of the schools that have sent people to our training. So if you can have a moment, you can take a look at my outline of the community outreach deliverables, the strategy that I suggest that we use to achieve these goals, and whatever support or resources might be needed. So now we have contract acquisition. Contract acquisition is a cornerstone of our mission and how we will positively impact the greater Dallas-Fort Worth community. Therefore, it's important for us to constantly look for innovative ways to acquire new contracts. My first deliverable for contract acquisition is to create a 10 to 15 minute solution-based contract pitch for both parents and school leadership. The strategy I have for doing this, I'd like to collaborate with the current Border Crossers executive directors to create and modify the Border Crossers pitch that we already have. So however we already go into schools and kind of pitch our presentation, I'd like to see and know that and think about ways that we should modify that for a Texas or a Dallas-Fort Worth market, but also look at the presentations and make sure that they are very client-centered, specific to that school culture. We know that the way that we pitch to an independent school might be a little different than how we pitch to a charter school. So coming up with a client-specific, whether it's a private school, or a charter school or a public school, having some nuances within the presentation that speak directly to that type of school climate. The resources that I'll need some support from the Border Crossers directors, executive directors, in how to successfully pitch. Any suggestions regarding how to implement or the steps of creating that type of presentation. Next, I would like to schedule 4 weekly meetings with a different school leader. One from a charter school, one from an independent school, one from a Dallas County public school, and one from a Fort Worth County public school. After visiting schools and leaving an awareness flyer for the school leader, I'll schedule a meeting with a professional development coordinator or the diversity director. These are usually the people who have the decision-making power within the school to schedule professional development. So I want to make sure that I'm getting a seat at the table, going to the schools, meeting with the right people. The resources that I'll need, some local Dallas-Fort Worth school demographics, which I do know how to access some of those online, but really networking and going into the schools and finding out where their information is accessible. Do they have some pamphlets or information about the school so that we can target and create a needs-based approach? I will also need a business card. I think that it's important for us to look at the title regional director as opposed to site director. I just feel like the term regional has a little bit more weight to it and maybe sounds a little bit more sustainable when going and approaching new potential people that we can partner with. I think regional says that we are committed to this and we're going to be here for a while. And next we have, I would like for us to obtain at least 6 new border crosser contracts by November 1. The strategy, I will present 10 to 15 minute solution-based pitch or presentation for school stakeholders. And after those presentations, I'm going to go for the ask, request the contract. I think that it's important for us to really hit the ground running. There's about 12 weeks within 3 months. And if we get at least 1 contract a week for half of that time, that's 6 contracts. And I really think that that is more than attainable. So if you have a second here, you can look at the contract acquisition deliverables, the strategy for achieving those deliverables, and the resources. And if I did fail to mention the support I'd need for that deliverable in obtaining the trainings, I need to know the pricing for all of our content. Are we going to modify the pricing in Texas at all, or is it going to stay consistent? So thinking about the pricing for charter school as opposed to independent school, public school as opposed to independent, what does the pricing look like for our contracts? Next, we have trainer support and development. Change always begins within. And as racial justice leaders in education, we must continually develop our own skills and expand our knowledge base. I love this picture because I think that it conveys that center, that we have to start within ourselves to grow. So my first deliverable is to create a leadership development framework because it's vitally important for us as a leadership team to be clear on what we value and how we promote our own growth as leaders. Our leadership development framework will be known as the Border Crossers Edge. Came up with a little acronym. This framework is designed to help our trainers understand our vision for accountability and growth. So an EDGE, the E stands for explore new concepts. The D, deliver content. E, growth-minded goals. And the final E, evaluate and reflect. And I think that we can flesh those terms out a little bit more if needed, but I think that kind of encompasses how I see our trainers developing and growing. The strategy for achieving this deliverable would be to collaborate with the executive directors to solidify trainer development strategies, including content enhancement areas and a leadership framework. Resources and support. I think that we need to identify at least 2 areas of development for our current trainers, whether that's cross-cultural communication, conflict resolution, or addressing resistance. Coming up with 2 specific areas where we want our trainers to grow, and then deciding on suggested pieces to read. So that brings me to the next deliverable. We will create a culture of professional development by having monthly readings and trainer meetings. These readings could be journal articles or they could be books, things that we have found that we know are valuable, and we want to facilitate just that concept of we are constantly learning and growing. The support that I'll need is the strategy that I have for getting this deliverable accomplished is that we will have monthly meetings. So at least one meeting a month between myself and all of the Border Crosser trainers. And during these meetings, we will discuss our monthly reading and how we can use the information to improve our own facilitation skills. The resources: during our monthly meetings, we'll discuss our monthly reading, and we will need to have a facility to go into, so that a meeting location, so that we can do that, and any suggested selected readings. And finally, we value developing our facilitators and our trainers so we want to have them host at least 2 facilitation sessions, one in September and one in October. These would be like an open house session. I don't see us paying our facilitators for this time. I think that this should be a part of our professional development kind of trajectory, if you will, or our professional development plan. So I really do see this time as kind of like volunteer hours where people are just coming together and facilitating and practicing their facilitation skills. These sessions will allow us to improve as facilitators, and it will also create more awareness about border crossers and help us to recruit new trainers. So we'll get the word out through some different networks that we have and invite people to come in to sit in on the sessions, to participate with us. And through that time, I do think that we will also attract more trainers. The strategy for doing this, I think that we need to select 2 topics. One topic for September, maybe intersectionality or racial anxiety, some things that we're kind of seeing that might be relevant to thought group discussions right now. So choose 2 topics and invite guests to participate in our open house sessions. We'll need to also have a location for this. So perhaps wherever that office space is that we are reserving from time to time, hopefully they'll have a large enough room where we can invite 10 to 15 guests and our trainers in to facilitate. So here is the written out framework for trainer support and development. And finally, we're going to look at site infrastructure. In order to positively impact our community, we must create a regional office that is sustainable and accessible. In order to do this, we need to recruit at least 2 interns. I prefer 1 intern at least to be bilingual. And the strategy for doing this is to contact local high schools, community colleges, and universities regarding racial justice organizations that are there on their campuses, attend their meetings and build relationships, and recruit volunteers or interns. I know that a lot of schools have social justice organizations, and I think that we could partner with some of the students that are within those organizations. We'll also need to reserve space as needed. So it would be important for us to find a local building that has some office space that is able to be reserved. I don't think we need an office right now every single day, but when we do have meetings or want to host a training, it's important that we have access to some space. So we would need a budget then also for office space. And the third deliverable would be a phone line and a computer for Border Crossers Dallas. I need a new laptop. Green Hill pays for my laptop right now. So a new laptop or some type of computer that we could send emails on, and just a phone line. So somewhere that people can call when they're interested in border crossers. Here is the site infrastructure outline. And finally, here are a few resources, additional resources. And here are advisors and mentors. Thank you for your time.